Welcome to TalkNorth.com. Thanks to our longtime producer, Brandon Morton. Please download before you listen. If you'd like to advertise with us, you can reach us at talknorthpodcast@gmail.com. And please follow us on Twitter at TalkNorthPod. 2 promo codes to be aware of. BiteSquad.com. Use the promo code TalkNorth to get your first delivery free. And go to SodaStick.com, the great local apparel company. Use the promo code YouBetcha to get free shipping on any sized order.
Thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on the show, Steve. Should be a good one. Thanks for having me, Steven.
Double F anytime, man.
Christopher Mando Russo here. You are listening to Steven Strom on TalkNorth.com.
Always passionate, always fiery. You're listening to the Strom Sports Show. Take it away, Steven.
And we welcome you into the Strom Sports Show, episode 68 on TalkNorth.com. What's going on, everybody? Hope everyone is doing well. It's nice to have you guys with us today. Steven Strom taking you for about an hour today. As always, big thanks to my producer, Brandon Morton, Jim Suhan. If you want to advertise with us on our website, and our video editor, Matt Augusta. A lot to get into today. We've got the Twins recap. I'll talk a little bit about that as we kind of turn the page on baseball season. The Gopher football team is 5-0 for the first time in Lord knows when, but this is coming out on a Sunday, so I do not know, obviously, what happened against the Nebraska team on Saturday. Also, the Minnesota Timberwolves, they open up in 2 weeks. I don't know how you guys are feeling about them. I'll talk a little bit about them as well. Maybe get a little beat writer. Maybe John Krasinski can come on next week and we can talk about that. We also have Michael Russo of The Athletic. He will come on. He'll talk about the Wild season as they have really come out slow out of the gates. As expected, we've got Whiners and Shiners of the weekend, and we have our Hicks picks. And I just went 3-0. And I'm feeling pretty good. I'm back to 500. I think I'm 2 over 500 now, so that's good to see. It's always good to get hot, and we'll do that a little bit at the end of this show. Okay, so let's put a lid on the Twins season by first saying they had a good season. It was fun. It was a nice surprise, but it's the same old song and dance. And what I'm about to say doesn't just go for the Twins. This is towards the Vikings, the Wild, and the Twins. There is no secret to success, and there's no pixie dust a fairy tale can drop on you to make an organization win championships in sports. You have to have the right people in the front office with the same mindset. And I believe all successful people, franchises, they have the same mindset. Good is not good enough. And you have to be able to stick your neck out and take a few risks. Bill Gates didn't become what he was by settling. Steve Jobs didn't become Steve Jobs by being average. The New England Patriots didn't wake up and win 6 Super Bowls. What I'm calling into question with these 4 professional sports teams in Minnesota that I happen to be in love with, whatever the GM / coach / owner has been doing, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. And I can see through some of the decisions being made. The Twins sat at the trade deadline, had a surplus of minor league prospects that teams like the San Francisco Giants were drooling over, and the Twins knew they needed a stud pitcher. Madison Bumgarner was sitting there. The Giants weren't in contention at the time. I know they got pretty hot towards the end, but they were willing to trade Madison Bumgarner with the right pieces. But they got gun shy. They second-guessed themselves. And they wouldn't stick their neck out to take a risk from being good to great. And it bit them in the ass in October. Because the Twins were completely outclassed in the pitching department. And that starts from up top. That's the owner saying, well, and this is what they did this year. What they did this year was this, and this is what cheap organizations do, and I'm sorry, they are. Cheap organizations have low expectations, which the Twins had this year. They exceeded them. I mean, they exceeded them through July at that rate. They got to the playoffs. They broke records. They won the AL Central. And the owners knew, you know what? Even if we don't lose, we're not going to get a lot of backlash from the fans because they didn't expect us to be here. And that's where the problem starts. I can sit here and give you example after example from these 4 organizations not taking risks, but what I can't have is the fans being content with disappointment. because I've seen enough, and I've seen a lot of it. Great season, Twins. So proud. After the Vikings season in 2017, where they go 13-3 and lose to the Eagles 38-7 in the NFC Championship. Great season, guys. So happy it happened. Not the ending we wanted, but man, I'm proud of this team. Fans, you have more power than you think. Fans screamed for Le'Veon Bell to go to the Jets. What happened? They got him. Fans screamed for Johnny Manziel. We need to have Johnny Manziel in Cleveland. The Browns drafted him. Granted, some of them don't work out, but what you can say to these organizations, they did not stick their neck out and try, because they did. They took a risk, and sometimes it doesn't pay off. But I can't sit here and rip the New York Jets, because you know what? They went out and they got Le'Veon Bell. They brought a guy in that probably is a top 5 running back, not this year statistically because of the team around him, but Le'Veon Bell is one of the best running backs in the league. And the Jets went out there, paid him the money, and he's now in a Jet uniform. It's become the norm in Minnesota to fail in big spots, let's be honest. And it needs to stop. The fans are part of this because you have become accustomed to it. If the Yankees won 101 games, hit 307 home runs, and got swept in the first round, New York would go bonkers. The city would become unhinged. If the Patriots went 13-3 and lost in the AFC Championship 38-7, the city of Boston would go nuts. Hockey-wise, if the Blackhawks failed to win a second-round series for 6 straight years like the Wild did, something would change. Look at what the Blackhawks did a few years ago. They got swept in the first round to Nashville, and they fired their coach, and they fired their GM, and they made all these wholesale changes. Because that's what winning organizations do. When they realize that good is not good enough, they start it all over. The fans' expectations and reactions are part of the urgency of the owner and GM to deliver a championship. If we applaud the Minnesota Twins for this year, there's the owner and GM, oh wow, they're okay with that. All right. They're okay with being swept in the first round. Oh, well, we can do that. We can definitely do that in our division. With the White Sox, the Tigers, and the Royals, man, we can win another Central title. Now, we're not going to beat the Yankees, but hey, if they're okay with this, let's go again. When I mean that the fans' expectations and reactions are part of the urgency of the owner and GM to deliver a championship, this basically means the more the fan settles for disappointment, the further the sense of urgency drifts from these 4 teams, the Vikings, the Twins, the Wild, and Timberwolves. These 4 organizations are taking advantage of you. They're taking advantage of the fans' satisfaction for disappointment. And the more the fans keep applauding disappointment, which is ultimately what it is every single season, that urgency isn't going anywhere. Let's shift to the Vikings, who won't win Sunday. We know how this works. It's the same old song and dance, right? Twins are the same old song and dance. Vikings are the same way. They're playing a 500 team. There's a couple of things, though, that are going in the Vikings' favor. Number 1, it's not in prime time, so maybe they have half a chance. Number 2, they are home. They're a much better home team. But number 3, what makes me think that this time is different? The Vikings are playing a team that is over 500. Let me rephrase that. Kirk Cousins is playing a team that with the winning record, and he's 5-27 against them. This is a huge game for both teams. I think later in the year, you're going to look back at this game, and it's going to be a big factor in determining tiebreakers and what the NFC will ultimately look like. But there's no really... I can't morally sit here and tell you guys that I feel good about this game. How could I? I'd be lying to you. How many times are you going to be fooled with Kirk Cousins and the Vikings when it comes to beating these teams? And Mike Zimmer's part of this as well. But Chicago, that was my tipping point. I mean, my goodness. They no-showed. They were completely dominated. And let me tell you something about this Eagles team. That front 4, it's just as good as Chicago's. You got Brandon Graham, who had 3 sacks last week against New York. You have Fletcher Cox, who you know is a big problem. This is The Boy Who Cried Wolf. It's the same movie over and over and over again with the same ending when it comes to the Vikings playing these winning teams. I read in the newspaper, they're ready. Hey, the Vikings are ready to change the narrative. Kirk Cousins, he had a great week of practice. Enough with the talk. Go out and do it. And even if they do it this Sunday, I'm still not going to believe in them. You look at the track history right now. It ain't good. It's not good. And let's logically look at this game. Eagles have the better quarterback. Carson Wentz is a way better quarterback right now than Kirk Cousins is. And the Eagles have the better coach. Doug Peterson is a Super Bowl winner. Innovative mind. He's better than Mike Zimmer. Those are two pretty important things when it comes to football. You take the better head coach and the better quarterback. There's a lot of people that do that when they bet. And usually, it's not the wrong thing to do. When have the Vikings proven they can beat a good team? Let's be honest. Last year, they beat the Eagles in Philly once. Philly squeaked into the playoffs after the Vikings lost in Week 17. Probably shouldn't have been there. And they beat the Packers at home on a Sunday night game, and the Packers didn't make the playoffs. Those are the two teams that they beat over 500. Everyone else, they lost to. What makes this time different? That's what I'll say here. And it's not. So I don't. That's why, a lot of times for the last year and a half, I'd sit here and say, "Oh, this is the Vikings. Vikings are going to be good." No, Vikings are going to win this game. No, they're not. They're not. I can't sit here and lie to you guys, because you look at statistically speaking, history tends to repeat itself, right? That they're not going to win this game because everything lines up that way. I hope I jinx them. I hope they win. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to cheer for them, obviously. But Kirk Cousins is 5-27 against winning teams. I mean, how can I sit here and tell you that I think the Vikings are going to win? Michael Russo, we'll get a little positive here, guys. I know, we'll get a little positive. Michael Russo, he's up next here from The Athletic. We'll talk about the Minnesota Wild, even though they've dropped to 0-3-0. We'll talk about the Wild. Who needs to step up? Can Bruce Boudreau can he coach the Wild a year from now? Will he be here? Is Jason Zucker going to be here? Are all of these newer guys going to develop? Will Kaprizov from Russia come to the Wild anytime soon? Stick with us here. Michael Russo is up next. And we're joined here by my good friend. I haven't spoken to him in a while here, Michael Russo of The Athletic. You know him. He covers the Minnesota Wild. Michael, how's everything today in snowy Winnipeg?
Yeah, it's pretty, I just hope I can get out in the morning. Wild have their home opener Saturday. I know this podcast can probably air after that, but man, it is ugly. I was just talking to Eric Stahl and Devin Dudnick in the elevator, and they were talking about wondering if they're going to be able to get out tonight. I have a 6 a.m. flight, and my issue is that the plane that takes me home gets in at like 11 p.m. or midnight. So I'll be watching that plane, making sure it lands in Winnipeg, and hopefully I don't have to figure out a way to drive home. It's not easy to drive from Winnipeg to Minneapolis when you rent a car. You can't really drop off a car from Canada in the U.S. without paying some crazy fee. So, as usual, I got anxiety. That's something else that has nothing to do with the team.
Other than that, everything else is good, though. So that's good to hear, as it is October and there's already getting snowstorms in Winnipeg. It's unbelievable. All right, let's get into it here. You probably know where this mood is going here with this interview. The Wild, this is an older group. You would assume they want to get younger in the offseason. They go and sign a 32-year-old in Matt Zuccarello to a 5-year deal. The Wild were the 5th lowest scoring team in the league last year, if I'm not mistaken. The Central is stacked. I know my expectations for this team, but Michael, you have the floor. Tell the fans what they should expect going into 2019 after this kind of slow start.
Well, I mean, it's a slow start. I think it feels a lot slower because they're carrying the burden of last year coming into this year. It's just sort of bled into this season. Just got sort of the negativity and pessimism that last year ended, and then they dropped their first couple games. They probably felt they deserved better in Colorado, and then what happens is you got to sit and stew for 4 or 5 days, and really hear all the outside noise, and you got the internal frustration and things like that. So, hopefully for the sake of Wild fans, I might be getting frustrated. Maybe by the time they're listening to this podcast, they're 2-2, right? They play tonight in Winnipeg. They play home against Pittsburgh, and that's kind of what they need is a couple of victories here to alleviate some of the pressure and and go on next week's road trip to Ottawa and Toronto, Montreal with some good feelings in their bodies. What can you expect? I think it's going to be a lot of this. I think it's going to be a lot of frustration, ups and downs. This team, every single night they are going against